ROI is one of those things that people put a lot of effort discussing into, but a lot of folks don't really get into the nitty-gritty parts, especially in the training arena. And the way I like to think of ROI is, if you look at it, we're going to give ourselves a graph here, and we're just going to call this ROI. And the more ROI, the more things happen. So for each project, you get leadership is much happier. They look at your organization differently. Things like job stability come into play, because when you're showing that you're returning on investment and you're making a part of the company and you're making profitability measures and things like that, the way people see you within the organization and leadership really skyrockets. So that's how you can build those relationships to really embed your training department into the company. And one thing that I found, especially working in training, is that a lot of people think ROI is a numerical value or your profit, when ROI, in fact, has to do with profit, but it is basically, it's your net profit, so your net, we'll just say P because I'm writing, times 100 over your investment. Now this is straight from accounting. This is how they look at it. So net profit times 100 over your investment. Let's take a look at that more in depth. And this is also expressed in the form of a percent as well. 0% being break even. So for a training department, what would be our initial investment? That would actually be our costs. So for training, to come up with this, we need to define all of our costs. So it would be the design. So what costs go into design? That would be your employees, or if you bought the training somewhere else outside, any vendors, any tooling, if you needed tools or anything like that, tooling. So whatever goes into the design, and then in the implementation, some things would be, and you all know what they are specific for yours, but you're always going to have the cost of employees attending the training. So that's a big cost. So the employee attending the training, you're going to have the instructor costs. You're going to have if there's expendable materials or perishable materials, you're going to have that as a cost. You're also going to have multiple things. If you have your own room, or if you have to rent a place to do it, things like that. So all that gets calculated into your cost, or what we talked about earlier was your initial investment. So now let's look at our net profit, because that can be sticky. That can be a little bit interesting for us in training, because we know what our costs are. We talked about them just a second ago. But our profit. So what do we tie that to? If we looked at our case study from Cisco, they had a four-pronged approach, if you will, to look at their benefit, to look at their profitability, to look at how they affected in the leadership training in the RTV. And what's interesting is things into our profit, this is going to be a comparison from before and after, if you will. So let's say manufacturing, say there were 10 mistakes an hour prior to training, and each mistake took 20 minutes to fix, so that's 200 minutes, so 180, so basically 3.5 hours worth of labor went in every hour on making mistakes, on repairing mistakes. So the cost would be, let's say it cost $100 an hour to do business, so just in that 1 hour we cost ourselves $350. Well, you average that out over time and time and time, and then the number gets quite a bit bigger. But now, so let's say after you look at a 6-month span, and the cost was something like $680,000 just in repairs that we had to accomplish. After the training, We cut that in half, so now it's about $340,000. So that's what we're looking at as our profit for there. But let's not count just that. So now let's look at throughput. So before, because of all the mistakes, you were throughputting less than half. So now our profitability goes up even more because we're getting more product out. That means there's more to sell. So you could say that that's probably would be about 75% of this number. Don't have a calculator on me, so we're just going to call it 240,000. So now we have 580,000, and there would be some other ways that we could also calculate this in. But why would that make a difference? And it would make a difference because remember, when we're creating the training, we need to look at our evaluation. Well, guess what? This number here, we're going to put that in blue because we're happy about it. This number here is directly tied to our initial assessment and how we created our evaluations. Because we can't come up with these numbers after the training. We need to come up with these with how we're going to gain these numbers prior to even implementing the training. That's why it's so important to have a process in place, have that plan in place before the training hits, because you have to know what you're going to put this training to say yes, it is profitable. Because remember, our big saying was begin with the end in mind. That's how we come up with these numbers. So for now, so the next slide, we're going to look at our 580,000 profitability over our initial cost. Now that's how we calculate profit, but remember, net profit, we have to calculate in what it costs as well. So if we had the $580,000 we had the $580,000 profit, and we had to spend $420,000. Our net is actually that $160,000 profit. So that's still not our ROI. That's just our net profit at this point. Our ROI is going to be expressed as a percentage. So as long as our numbers are accurate, here's what it's basically going to look like. We said we made $160,000 net profit, and remember, we spent $420,000 to get to that point. So we're going to be positive. It's not going to be a negative. Remember, we have to multiply that by 100. You can do either one first. But when you work those numbers, you come out to your ROI of roughly 38%. So what you could say here is we have a return on investment for this training product of 38%. And that's the nitty-gritty on how you can come up to an actual ROI. Simply, there's much more complicated ways to do it as well. But remember, if you start with the end in mind and you have your evaluations set and focus on where they need to be, coming up with these facts and figures is just going to be a natural part of the process.